Thirsty for blood and cruel, Romans crucified and burned Christians. According to stories, Peter and Paul became martyrs due to Nero's torture. Paul was beheaded, while Peter was crucified upside down. Without the Roman Empire, the successful development of Christianity would have been impossible. The empire can be seen as a crucial factor in paving the way for the spread of the Christian faith. The unifying elements of the empire facilitated the dissemination of the gospel. Roman-built roads eased travel from one place to another. Throughout the empire, people could communicate in Greek, and the robust Roman forces maintained peace. Due to increased mobility, groups of craftsmen migrated, seeking temporary settlements in major cities like Rome, Corinth, Athens, or Alexandria, and later expanding to other cities. Christianity entered a religiously open climate. In this New Age movement, many began adopting Eastern religions, worshipping deities such as Isis, goddess of nature, Dionysus, god of wine, Mithras, god of light, Cybele, goddess of nature, and others. Followers sought new beliefs, but some of these religions were prohibited due to suspected offensive ceremonies. Other beliefs, such as Judaism, were officially recognized and protected since the time of Julius Caesar, despite its monotheism and biblical statements setting it apart from other worship practices. Seeing an opportune moment, gospel messengers began traversing the entire empire. In Jewish synagogues, places where craftsmen gathered, and in slums, they spread the news of the gospel and won new souls. Soon, churches were established in major cities, including the imperial capital. The city of Rome, the empire's center, attracted people like a magnet. Paul himself desired to visit the city. Romans 1:10-12, and in his closing remarks to the Roman congregation, he already knew many Christians there. Romans 16:13-15. Perhaps he had met them during his travels. When Paul arrived in Rome, he was in chains. The conclusion of Acts states that Paul eventually gained permission to be under house arrest in a rented house. There, he could receive guests and teach them. According to tradition, Peter also joined the church in Rome. Although we don't have an exact time frame, it is reasonable to assume that under the leadership of these two figures, the congregation grew strong, including nobles, soldiers, craftsmen, and servants. For 3 decades, Roman officials considered Christianity a sect of Judaism, a legitimate religion, with no intention of creating a new sect within Judaism. However, many Jews took offense as this new belief began to emerge, posing a threat to both Judaism and Rome. Tacitus, the historian, reported disturbances among the Jews in Rome related to Christus from one of the city's quarters. Tacitus might have misunderstood. People were likely debating about Christos, who is the Christ. By the year 64 AD, some Roman officials began to realize that Christianity was fundamentally different from Judaism. Jews rejected Christians, viewing Christianity as an illegitimate religion even before the Great Fire in Rome. Society had started to turn against this fledgling belief. Although Romans were inclined to accept new gods, Christianity refused to acknowledge other beliefs. Because Christianity opposed the entrenched Roman imperial polytheism, the empire retaliated. On July 19th, a fire broke out in a slum sector in Rome. For 7 relentless days, the unquenchable flames destroyed densely populated dwellings. 10 out of 14 blocks were obliterated, and numerous residents perished. According to legend, Emperor Nero was playing the lyre when Rome burned. Many of his contemporaries suspected him of responsibility for the fire. When the city was rebuilt with funds from the public, Nero seized a significant piece of land to construct his golden palace. The fire served as a shortcut to urban renewal. To deflect blame, the emperor scapegoated Christians, accusing them of igniting the fire. Consequently, Nero vowed to hunt them down and execute them. The first wave of Roman persecution against Christians began shortly after that fire and persisted until the death of Nero in the year 68. Thirsty for blood and cruel, Romans crucified and burned Christians. Their bodies lined the streets of Rome, serving as torchlight. Other Christians were dressed in animal skins and thrown into cages to be torn apart by dogs. According to stories, Peter and Paul became martyrs due to Nero's torture. Paul was beheaded, while Peter was crucified upside down. Persecution occurred sporadically and remained localized. An emperor might have initiated it, and it could last for approximately a decade. However, periods of peace would follow until a governor initiated persecution against Christians in his region, undoubtedly with Rome's approval. This pattern persisted for 2.5 centuries. Tertullian, a 2nd century Christian writer, once said, "The blood of martyrs is the seed of the church." Strangely, each time persecution spread, the number of Christians who became victims increased. In his first letter, Peter encouraged Christians to stand firm, confident in the victory and power of Christ that would be strengthened. 1 Peter 5:8-11. His words proved true with the growth of the church amid oppression. In the 4th century, information emerged about the trophy of victory for Peter on Vatican Hill and the trophy of victory for Paul on the road to Ostia. Assuming these refer to tombs, church buildings were later erected on those sites. Recent excavations in the Vatican uncovered a monument dating back to the 2nd century, possibly associated with Peter's trophy of victory, near a cemetery that began use around the 2nd century. However, there is still no definitive evidence that Peter ever resided in Rome. The excavations support literary tradition, and the likelihood of Peter's death in Rome seems plausible. The martyrdom of the apostles occurred during the mass persecution in the year 64 AD. Tacitus's account, Annals 15:44, and Suetonius's brief mention, Nero 16, reveal surprising details about the Christian community in Rome. Their numbers were significant. Their connection to Jesus was apparent, yet their fellowship was distinct from Judaism. They became targets of fear and abhorrence among the people, for reasons not explicitly explained, despite their beneficial influence on humanity. Thus, Nero's cruelty was merely an expression of his hatred towards Christianity. In the world's metropolis,